What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we're going to be doing a different lift kit for the first time ever here on the channel. I, working at the dealership, have installed like hundreds of Mopar 2-inch lifts because that is the factory lift. You keep factory warranty. Everything's happy with the Jeep, with Mopar, with the dealership. Mopar has apparently recently teamed up with AccuAir. Now, if you haven't heard of AccuAir before, that is because they are an air suspension company that I typically associate with lowered airbag equipped cars. But AccuAir has a off-road series, and like I said, Jeep and AccuAir have teamed up, and now the AccuAir 3.5-inch airbag suspension lift is a Mopar part number. You can go to your Mopar dealer and order that lift, and we're going to be putting it on this Jeep. So is this going to be a step-by-step install video? No, absolutely not. I have never installed one before. It's going to take me a lot more time than normal, but I at least want to show you guys maybe some time lapse of some of the cool stuff. But more importantly, once we're done, I want to show you guys around it, show you kind of some of the functionality, and then go out and drive the thing and see how it feels. Does it feel as nice, as smooth as the Mopar lift or not? So like I said, we'll do some quick time-lapse stuff of maybe one front corner, one rear corner to kind of show you the parts and pieces. And then, like I said, we'll go out and drive this thing. But let's do a quick walk around on the victim here, the new 24 Jeep Wrangler. So guys, we've got a 2024 very nicely equipped Rubicon here. Factory steel bumper winch group. We've got the one-touch top in the cool Earl Grey color. Now, this is not an XR, which is perfect since we are going to be putting a lift on this thing, but it did get optioned with the new for 24 leather seats, which get you the power adjustable seats for the first time ever for 2024 in a Wrangler. Other than that, it is normal 24 Wrangler. We've got the new big cool display. But yes, this thing is going to be getting the 3.5-inch AccuAir lift. So in theory, at normal ride height, we should be sitting 3.5 inches higher. And I believe you can then air up 2 more inches and down from that 3.5 an inch or so. So again, I'll try and bring you guys along on the install, but this should be the last time this thing is sitting low on the ground.
Alright guys, so horrible YouTuber here. I of course didn't really film any time lapse, and again that's because I didn't really know the system, but I did take a quick little walk around video here after everything is said and done. So kind of starting up here in the front corner, we can see our airbag, we can see our aftermarket AccuAir lower control arms and our ride height sensor. Moving towards the back, we can see our AccuAir upper and lower control arms. We've got those really nice billet aluminum bump stop extensions. Again, we're looking up here now at our rear ride height sensor. There is a ride height sensor on each corner. Again, rolling around, we can see those really nice JLUR shocks. Here is a really good look at our airbags. You can see that massive airbag in place of our coil spring. And again, we've got our drop track bar bracket there in the rear. And again, here is the other rear ride height sensor on those AccuAir control arms. Moving underneath, here is our compressor tank manifold assembly on this really heavy skid plate. So I don't really think it's going to be bad dragging across rocks because that is some thick metal there with everything all kind of nicely tucked up top. Again, moving back forward, we can again see our airbag, JLUR shock, the control arm there. We've got the Mopar extended links. And then last but not least up front, we do have an adjustable track bar that came with the kit.
All right, guys, so we've got everything completed. I have no clue how much I talked about the install on some voiceover here. Now, I did not show, like I said, a real install video. I just have never done this kit before, so it's hard for me to talk very educatedly about installation if I haven't done a whole bunch to be able to tell you guys tips and tricks. But I at least kind of did like a little walk around video, and my plan was to kind of voice over some parts and pieces. But here is the finished kit. It is currently sitting in the normal ride height mode, which should be about a 3.5-inch lift. So guys, as you can see, this kind of pretty much should look like a Mopar 2-inch lift, which most people end up finding out that is about 3 inches of lift. So as this currently is sitting in the normal ride height position with 37-inch tall BFG KO2s. Now I will show you the controller here inside the vehicle. Now I chose to route the wiring through the center console, so if you wanted, you could have the whole thing dropped into the center console and not have a bunch of wiring and stuff dangling around the interior. But this is the AccuAir controller. There's a lot to talk about here. We've got number 2, which is our normal ride height setting. We can bump it up to number 3, which is the off-road or crawl mode. We also have 1, which is kind of an aero mode that lowers the vehicle down, but it can still be driven in that mode. So say you were doing a long highway trip and you were getting blown around, you could air the Jeep down to this number 1. Now, you can air this thing out by holding this double down, double arrow button for 2 seconds, and it will lower itself all the way to the bump stops. Now, another cool thing is all the independent adjustability. This is basically an overview of the vehicle. You've got left front tire, right front tire, left rear tire, and right rear tire. And then these main controls here are for the axle assembly. So this is up in the front, down in the front, and vice versa for the rear. So you can then independently mess with or, you know, really get this thing sitting how you want. Now, like I said, this is currently in number 2. Let me hit number 1 and show you guys, or excuse me, let me hit number 3 and show you the crawl or off-road mode. Now, it's going to be kind of hard because this thing does move pretty quick to see how quickly this moves. So I'm going to hit it really quick. And just like that, this is now sitting at roughly a 5-inch lift. So if you guys can tell, it is decently taller now than it was previously. Now there is even more height that you can go up in this mode. Like I said, you can, if you needed to, say you were getting ready to do a water crossing, you can then manually air up the front and up the rear, maxing out the airbags front and rear. And again, it's going to be kind of hard to tell since I don't have a camera standing out here, but it is now even taller in the front and rear than it previously was. So this is like really, really tall. If you were getting ready to drive through a water crossing, I could see this being very useful, being able to air the thing up as far as possible. So I'm going to now drop this thing so you guys can see from basically all the way up down to nothing. So I'm going to hold the double down button for 2 seconds. And this thing is going to air itself out all the way to the bump stops. So guys, as you can see now, we are sitting even lower than a factory Rubicon. This thing, like I said, is sitting on the bump stops front and rear. Now, could you drive it sitting on the bump stops? No, not really, but think of a scenario where you are loading a bunch of heavy stuff in the back or hooking up to a trailer or whatever. You could drop this thing onto the ground and very nicely be able to load up equipment. If you had a roof rack on the roof, you could drop the thing down and be able to load that considerably easier. So it's just kind of a cool thing to be able to, on the fly, adjust the vehicle's ride height. Now guys, one last party trick here I'm going to show you is, again, something that you wouldn't often use, but it is pretty cool. So we are currently airbagged out all the way. We are sitting on the bump stops. And again, this is kind of just a cool party trick of having independently adjustable airbags. But we're gonna come over to our controller, verify our right side airbags are fully deflated here with our individual control. We are now gonna go to our left side airbags and fully inflate our left side airbags. All right, we are fully inflated on one side and fully deflated on the other side, which you now have 5.5 inches of lift on this side and 0 inches of lift on that side. And again, could you drive like this? No, that's not gonna be terribly safe. We're again sitting on the bump stops on the left side. But that's a pretty cool party trick as you're pulling up to your buddy's house, out to your Jeep event, something like that, having this thing sitting so ridiculously. Now, one of the things we did to achieve this was put it in 4-wheel drive and disconnect the front electronic sway bar so the Jeep can lean more easily since that sway bar is disconnected. But you gotta admit, that's kind of cool. You also get a really good view of those JRI shocks, those airbags, the AccuAir control arms, all of the parts and pieces that come in that kit. But you gotta admit, that's pretty ridiculous looking at a Jeep leaning on its side. And again, just as quickly as you lifted, lowered, and put the thing on its side, you can quickly return back to a normal height. I hit the normal ride height button, and the Jeep is immediately correcting itself back to normal ride height.
Guys, another thing I forgot to talk about is the onboard air compressor. Obviously, we showed it under the vehicle, but I forgot to mention one of the coolest things in the back of the Jeep, and that is the air regulator and air chuck back here in the back. This is obviously looking into the rear cargo area, and this is tucked up at the very front left of the engine bay. What we've got here is a metal bracket that houses some of the electronics for the system. But as you guys can see, we've got a regulator, pressure gauge, and the air chuck. So you can, with the provided hose in the kit, air up your tires. You could potentially run some air tools, or use an air blower to clean off, what have you. So with the compressor on the vehicle, you could air up at the end of the day without needing to bring another onboard air supply, since you have it now built onto the vehicle.
All right, guys, so I thought we would kind of conclude this video with a test drive. Now, one thing, if you've watched the channel or the Jeep lift videos for any amount of time, you know that I absolutely harp on the ride quality of the Mopar lifts. Now, whether that be the Fox or Bilstein shocks that are now being put on the Mopar lifts, or is that the spring rates that are included with the Mopar lifts, whatever it is, the combination of everything, they just ride really, really well. The road manners, the lack of harshness over bumps is always very appreciated with the Mopar lifts. Working at a shop that deals with Jeeps, I am often in Jeeps that have aftermarket lifts, maybe of less quality, or maybe just they're too heavily sprung, and they ride poorly. They're very stiff, over bumps, the vehicle's bouncing around and are just not very nice and comfortable to drive. So again, that's one of those things that I just absolutely love about the Mopar lift, is the ride quality, since most of the time our Jeeps are going to be driven on the street. So that's why I was very, very interested to get this thing out on the road and see how this setup felt. Now, this is all different parts from a Mopar lift. This is, different control arm, shocks, obviously airbags. One thing that is Mopar part numbered on this lift is the sway bar end links. Front and rear are directly from the Mopar 2-inch lift, so I thought that was kind of cool that they were using a nice factory OEM part. Now, I will say we are in the normal ride height, or the level 2 position here for this test drive. I don't know if that greatly affects, the ride quality, having it in the higher or lower setting, but again, we are in what you'd normally be driving the vehicle in, that 3.5-inch lift or so. So again, this is should be a 410 geared Rubicon. This is a 3.6 with the 8-speed transmission. And again, getting on the highway here, it feels very normal. I'm so far not having any adverse feelings towards the lift. Now, this does have 37's on it, which are going to be a little bit taller, a little bit heavier, a little less road manners than a 35, just because you've got a lot more sidewall going down the road. But here we are cruising at 60 miles an hour. I've got my hands off the wheel and it's going straight down the road. So again, not that that is the test, the end-all test, but that's always a good test if you can take your hands off the wheel and have your lifted Jeep on 37's moving straight, and you're not just fighting and battling every single bump in the road. Now, ride quality, again, that's what I was really interested about, is how stiff or firm this was going to feel. And I guess if I had to describe it, it would be slightly firmer or stiffer than the Mopar Lift. Now, obviously, we've got different shocks. We've got airbags in place of the spring, so it's going to be a little bit different. But by any means is this uncomfortable or jarring? No, absolutely not. And it is so very close to how that Mopar kit drives that I'm very, very impressed. I was honestly worried this thing was going to be a very harsh, bouncy, rough riding Jeep, but it feels very, very nice. You could definitely get in this thing, drive across country with no issue. Now, road manners, I'm gonna kind of swerve around here. Does it feel any more or less tippy, rolly than a normal Jeep or a normal lifted Jeep? No, I don't think so. You're still got a lot of weight up in the air with a lift, with big tires, but you still have sway bars in place, and all of the angles for control arms and stuff like that is where it needs to be. So road manners, handling, all of that feel very normal for a lifted Jeep, a Mopar lifted Jeep. Now, one, I guess, negative I can comment about is the air compressor. The air compressor on this is mounted underneath the vehicle. I hopefully showed you guys that in our kind of quick video, you know, B-roll walking around this thing. When the compressor is running, you do feel it, you do hear it. It is not loud by any means, but you definitely hear it in the vehicle. And again, you feel a slight buzz in your seat. That compressor is mounted on rubber and then mounted to the, you know, bracket that it lives on, which is then mounted to the frame of the vehicle. So there's gonna be a little bit of noise, gonna be a little bit of vibration into the cab. So I don't know what I was expecting. I have never driven or played with an air ride vehicle, or aftermarket air ride for that matter, but you do feel it, you do hear it. So that is one thing I at least wanted to comment about as I was playing with the kit and was making the compressor come on, run, make noise, what have you. But again, for the most part, I wouldn't really know this is not a Mopar Lift. The thing seems to ride, drive, do everything nicely as I hoped it would for something that is now a partner with Mopar. And if I didn't already mention this, AccuAir has teamed up with Mopar as a affiliate, and you can directly go to your parts counter, your Mopar dealership, and order this lift kit through your dealership, which is very cool. It always gives you a little better feeling when the manufacturer endorses or approves or what have you of the lift, of the product, that you aren't going to worry or run into as many warranty issues as you might if you've got something aftermarket that's not approved, I guess, by the manufacturer. So guys, I wish we could go out and off-road and crawl with this thing and see how it actually performs, but this unfortunately is an unsold brand new vehicle that is going to be sitting pretty on the lot, on the showroom, until it gets purchased and finds its new home, and then that owner can decide what they want to do with it. So guys, I hope you appreciated a look at a different lift other than the Mopar 2-inch lift that we have put on many times here on the channel. And heck, if you didn't even know this was a thing, here's a really cool option for your JL or JK or Gladiator. They have all of those kits available. And again, yes, it is very expensive, but dang, it's kind of cool, kind of fun to play with. And I can think of a lot of cool applications that all of this would come together. Again, loading the back of the vehicle, you could drop it down if you had a rooftop tent or, you know, a roof rack, or heck, even backing up to a trailer. You could lower the back of the Jeep, get the ball underneath the tongue of the trailer and lift the thing up and not even have to mess with the jack. It would be pretty cool to be able to utilize a lot of the system. Now, one thing I kind of laughed about was the cool party trick on leaning the Jeep on its side. I did think of a practical application. The last time we were off-roading, there was a very side hill trail that leaned you into a rock wall, and it was pretty hairy on getting through there. If you had this air suspension, you could lower the left side or the right side, whatever you needed to do, and lean the vehicle away from the rock obstacle. That is cool. Again, does that happen terribly often? No, but the one time you needed it, it would be really nice to be a little bit further away from that rock wall or ledge or whatever you were leaning towards. So guys, thanks for coming out into the shop with me and installing a new lift kit and getting to play with kind of a cool thing, you gotta admit. And guys, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.